Welcome to Living the Empowered Life podcast. I'm Tamiko Pugh, also known as the Empowering Diva. Each week, you'll hear inspirational interviews as well as actionable tips and strategies that you can implement into your daily life to help you live a life of passion, purpose, and potential. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump into today's episode of Living the Empowered Life. Welcome to today's episode of Living the Empowered Life. I'm your host, Tamiko Pugh, affectionately called the Empowering Diva. In today's episode, I'll be speaking with speaker, author, and life strategist Sharron Jamison. Sharron will be sharing her tips and techniques to help you dare to soar higher so that you can live the life you are destined to live. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into our conversation today with Sharron Jamison. Sharron, welcome to Living the Empowered Life podcast.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I really enjoy and appreciate what you're doing in the world. So I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you so much. What I want to do now is just go ahead and introduce you to the Living the Empowered Life community. As an entrepreneur, author, speaker, visionary, and life strategist, Sharron Jamison has been teaching principles of love and self-empowerment for more than 25 years. Her career journey has taken her from owning a fitness studio to managing multi-million-dollar accounts for an international biotechnology firm. Sharron is a dynamic and energetic speaker who has delivered passionate, powerful, and inspiring speeches to audience of all sizes. She knows how to captivate and motivate people to see their own potential, leverage their unique talents, and embrace their own power to achieve their goals. She challenges people to dare to soar higher. And so what I love about Sharron, her and I are both members of several women's empowerment and entrepreneur groups. And so again, Sharron, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. I know that you're very, very busy. So thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm grateful. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
You know, one of the things I know over the past few years, I've had an opportunity to follow you on social media, and I've always been inspired by your persistence in empowering women or empowering the community at large. I mean, just from your Facebook posts and to all of your motivational live messages. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is you talk about being able to daring to soar higher. What does it mean to soar higher, and how did you come up with that concept?
Oh, yes. I believe that daring to soar higher is so critical because we all function in a way that we were bred to do, but we were born to be bigger and better than we are now. So to dare to soar higher means to get beyond and above all of our excuses, all of our societal norms, all of our conditioning, all of our historical drama that was passed down to us so that you can really be who you were created to be. So soaring higher means that we have to step beyond where we are now and step beyond where and how we were raised and reared and step beyond all of our mistakes and failures to be who I believe our Creator has called us to be. And so it's all about getting above what's holding you down, what's holding you back, what's holding you hostage. Because if you can get above it, you can get beyond it, and then you can be what you have been called to be and not settle for what you have been told to be or tricked to be. And so I think that's really important for people to soar higher than they have ever soared before, because I know that right now there is so much opportunity. And when people can get out of their own way and get beyond their conditioning and those paradigms and those embedded intestinal stories that impede their own progress, they can really enjoy fulfillment. And I think that's what we all want. We want to be fulfilled, being who we authentically are. But you can't do that if you cannot soar beyond what you are now or what society has told you to be.
I love that. And I love that you said, get above it and get beyond it. Get above it and get beyond it. That's like a tweetable moment right now where I want to just kind of tweet that out there. I think it's important that we know that we can rise above any circumstance that we've gone through in life and then moving beyond it. So often I notice that even with my clients, they don't want to move beyond what they've experienced in life. And sometimes we continue to tell ourselves that story over and over again, and we're moving backwards instead of moving forward. So your statement or your quote of get above it and get beyond it is so key in being able to move forward in life and being able to actually soar higher, as you call it. So I think that's amazing that you're helping people to do that and to get out of your own way. So often,
Yes.
how often are we in our own way of moving forward in life? I know personally I've done that in the past. And not that I'm perfect, because I'm sure I do it now. We get in our own ways. I was in my own way. And I talked about this when I first started the podcast. I was supposed to start this podcast 2 years ago, but I got in my own way and I let fear, I let the thoughts of not being good enough, all that stuff got in my own way. And so here I am now, 2 years later, finally launching the podcast because I decided, to turn my fear into faith and say, you know what, Tamiko, there's people out here that need the message that you have. And there's people that you need to interview that have a message for other people so that they can move forward in life, so that they can get out of their own way. So I think that is very key in helping people to do that. So thank you for everything that you're doing in that area.
Oh, thank you. And I think it's something that you said about getting out of our own way. I believe our stories are important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of our failures, our mistakes. But stories are to be told, but stories are not to become traps. It's something we get trapped in our story because our story becomes our identity. And if somebody has told you you were dumb and ugly and stupid all of your life, that becomes so much of your identity, and you can never perform beyond your identity. So if you see yourself small, if you see yourself encumbered, if you see yourself ugly and untalented, you're not going to become a talented person. And so getting out of our way, I think is more difficult than we understand, because not only do we have what I call personal beliefs around failure and doubt, but they're also institutionalized and systemic beliefs, especially if you are a person of color or a person considered an other. So getting beyond our stories and getting beyond our stuff is not as easy. And I believe, and I said this in one of my books, it always takes another set of eyes to help you rise. Because we don't see our dysfunction and we don't see how we're settling. And many times we don't see our own gifts. And that's why it's so important sometimes to have an objective view so people can help you see how they experience you, so that you can tap into all those unused and unclaimed talents and gifts and wisdom that you already have, because we came to the world fully loaded for success. So we have to unlearn all of those stories that become traps and impede our progress for us to be who I believe we have been called and created to be. So the stories are critical. And some of the stories are ones that we make. Some of the stories are some that we've been told. And some of the stories that are stories we have been caught, because some things are taught, some things you're caught. But what they have in common is that they all trap you into a place of mediocrity. And that's why we got to be careful, because today's being comfortable becomes tomorrow's captivity. So we have to make that we don't become captives of our own stories, because we can't, again, soar above it and beyond it.
And I love that you said stories are not to be a trap. And so what I want to talk about a little bit now is a lot of us have a story as to how we got into the business that we're doing today. So whether you're a life coach, a speaker, an author, we're helping people, to pursue their goals. It's something that a story that we've experienced or something that we've gone through in life. So how has your life prepared you for the work that you do today?
Oh my gosh, there's so many ways. My first story was around integration. I started school in the end of the 60s, And even though integration was the law of the land, it was not the love of the people. And so in kindergarten, I was the only Black little girl at school, and the teacher hit me in the head with a chair because I was attacking her. Second grade, a couple of kids jumped on me and gave me a concussion. So between kindergarten and sixth grade, I endured bullying, pain, feeling less than, unqualified, feeling stupid. And what happened before I was 10 years old took me 20 to 30 years to get over. And so my own delivery process for feeling that I was dumb and stupid, a second-class citizen, my journey to understanding my power and to address systemic influences that made me think that I was less than was a very painful journey. And that was the catalyst for me to be doing this work, because I started doing this work initially helping people understand that just because society said something about you didn't mean it was true. That was my own story, and that's how I started in this work and wrote my first book called I Can Depend on Me, was about teaching people to depend on themselves so that they are not shackled by social paradigms and social conditioning of who they are. Because the thing is, if you can't define yourself, you will always look in the hands or the mouths or the eyes of someone else to affirm you. But you have to depend on yourself to be yourself, even if it means you have to stand alone. And that was my initial experience into doing this work. And then my other experience is that I overcame a very challenging eating disorder because I used food to numb me. And I was able to address my food addiction. I started doing work around addiction and healing. And then after being in corporate America, I'm still in corporate America now for 34 years, and being a woman of color, I had to learn how to swim in some toxic water. And so I started helping women of color understand how to swim in toxic water without getting bitten. And because sometimes when we try to be successful in environments that are structured to deny us and limit us, we start to believe the lie that we're not qualified. And so I started doing that work with women in the corporate sector. And then I started doing women after I turned 40. I started realizing I wanted to do more in my life. And then I started working with women around reinvention, because even though I was successful, I was not fulfilled. So I had the talent, but I did not have the meaning. And I started reinventing myself. And it was a process and a journey. And that's when I started doing this work for women who are in transition over 40. So everything doing was based on my own journey, but also based on wanting people to learn about their self-mastery, becoming self-aware so that they could make different choices. You can't make a courageous, conscious choice if you're not conscious. But some people have lived in the dark so long, they don't even know that living in the light is a possibility. And that's my goal, my job, my mantra, to help people turn on the light in their own life so that they can live in a way that makes their heart sing.
Well, I think that is so amazing how you were able to take your life experiences and learn from those experiences and then come back into society and share your lessons learned. So pretty much it's like you're sharing your lessons learned to other people so that they don't have to experience that. I think that's amazing. A lot of times we often wonder what our life purpose is. And I realized, a long time ago that it's tied to something that we've gone through in the past or something that we've experienced. And we're able to take that information and those lessons learned and impart them into other people. So I think that's awesome. And I think that's great. Something else that you said was you were successful, but not being fulfilled. I think there are so many people, they're successful, but they're not fulfilled in life. And so success always doesn't equal fulfillment because there's always a void or there's always something there that's going to be missing, which leads me to something else I wanted to talk about, walking in your authentic power. So like one of the principles of living the empowered life is to walk in your authentic power. And as I was reading your bio, I realized that it aligned with some of your teachings of helping people to embrace their power so that they can achieve their goals. And so, how important is it for a person to walk in their power or embrace their power when it comes to achieving their goals?
Oh my God, what a great question. I think embracing your power is everything. You cannot advocate for yourself if you don't know yourself. And so you have to understand who you are and who you are not, and then have the clarity and the courage to advocate for yourself, to be yourself, and to succeed as yourself. And that means being accountable for your decisions. That means being accountable for your relationships. It means accepting that you have agency to do what must be done. And I think that is the challenge because we are conditioned to follow the crowd. But to be your authentic self and to walk in your power, you have to unconscious and not the crowd. You have to follow your own heart and not the herd, and follow your own mind and not the masses. And that is difficult because when we crave acceptance more than authenticity, we will never be successful. And that's the challenge. A lot of people crave being accepted and validated, and people don't know that they are craving acceptance. That is one of the challenges around empowerment. When people start to crave and to be accepted, to be legitimized, to be authenticated, to be endorsed by people, they give their power away. You are strong. You know that you can fly solo. You don't have to fly solo, but when you know that you can, that you are able to do you, even if it means that you have to forsake all others, that's when you are powerful. You have to be a free agent, a free thinker. And if you're not a free agent, a free thinker, you will never be liberated. You will always live by the mandates and dictates of others. That's why that's so important, to embrace your power to say no, your power to say, this is who I am, your power for you to advocate for yourself, your power to decide what's important to you, your power to pivot and start all over, your power to push back obligations and expectations and assumptions that make you betray your own soul. That's power. I think many times we think of power as titles, but the only title that you need is the title to accept I am. And if you cannot accept or embrace that your power is your own voice, you will never be a free agent. You will never be liberated. You're taking a stand means that you are sovereign, but you can't be sovereign if you need the applause from the crowd. And that is the challenge. Do you want to be authentic, or do you want applause? Do you want to be you, or do you want acceptance? Do you want to feel liberated, or do you want to feel loved with shackles, right? So there are all these types of things. And I think that when people understand what power is, they will choose it. But many times people have not been taught that they have the power to choose. So they go along to get along, not understanding that little by little by little, they are selling their own soul. They are betraying themselves. And anytime we betray our souls, we will never be happy.
Anytime we betray our souls, I'm sorry, I got to write this down. Anytime we betray our souls, we will never be happy.
Yes, we can't be
That's
happy.
powerful.
Because our souls know, this is what something is so important. Our souls know more than our mouths can articulate, right? Because remember, we came to the world loaded to be successful. So even if we don't know how to tap into that wisdom, but we came to the world knowing it, what happens is that we become programmed to unlearn it. That's why if you think about when you were a little kid, you knew that you didn't want to do something, but your parents told you to do it, right? So you did it. You didn't want to do it. You didn't want to share, but you did it. You didn't want to go someplace, but you did it. But however, so what we learn to stop listening to our voices. And you need to listen to your voice which I believe is God speaking to you, because you can't have your own vision if you have to follow tradition.
Wow. You know
And so
what? That's
that's
so
why it's
powerful.
important.
I remember some years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, when I first started speaking and sharing my story and being on stage in front of people. And I wasn't really sure who I really was. So learning to embrace my power, I hadn't learned that yet. And so I would imitate other people. I would get on stage and I would wear like I remember I wore like a dark color pantsuit. Mind you, I don't even like pants. I love dresses. I love bright colors. But I thought, because that's what I saw, like, oh, this person, she's a motivational speaker. She has on a dark suit. Her hair is pulled back. She's so professional and she speaks so eloquently. And I would try to imitate that, and it just didn't work because it wasn't who I was. And you made a comment when you said, anytime we betray our souls, we will not be happy. I wasn't happy. The people that I was trying to speak to in the audience, they weren't happy. They weren't happy until I embraced who I really was and really learned to be authentic and walk and to embrace my power of who I was. And that's the person that loves to wear beautiful, bright colored dresses and, certain hairstyles and speak with a little bit of slang every now and then when I'm on stage. You know what I mean?
I love it.
And it wasn't until I was able to embrace that I authentically became who people affectionately call me now, the empowering diva, that this person that gets on stage and she's not afraid to be herself. She's not afraid to speak slang and to really share who she really is. And people were able to accept that. And so that's what I think about too, when I think about embracing, your authentic power and who you really are called to be. And when you said, anytime we betray our souls, I felt like I was betraying who I really was. I was betraying the person that God called me to be because I was trying to be someone else and it didn't work. And I wasn't happy. And neither were the people that I was talking to. They weren't happy. So,
but you know what? We're taught compliance before we're taught to be individuals. If you think, and when you're taught compliance, you become captives to whatever the teaching is, right? And I learned that because I'm also a PK and the minister myself. And one of the most empowering things I do as the minister is to tell people to critically read the Bible. Don't believe it. Critically engage it, question it, interrogate it. And that is something that people are very uncomfortable with. But I think that until you can question something and interrogate something, you will have blind allegiance to something, and blind allegiance to anything that you don't understand does not honor you, nor does it honor God, right? So I think that's really key. And something that you said was so critical about imitation. I believe as visionaries and leaders, catalysts, which you and I are, you have to walk not by sight, but by sound.
Oh, yes.
Sight means that we're going to imitate everybody, but sound means that we're walking, listening to God's voice in our own intuition. It's a difference. And sometimes my grandmother used to say something, and I never understood the importance of it. And I put it in my new book coming up. She says, baby, sometimes you see better with your eyes closed. And I never thought about that until I thought about the power of imagination.
Yes.
You have to close your eyes so you can see better, because your imagination needs room to roam, and your imagination can't move if it's captivated by what it can see. Because remember, vision means you don't see it. Are you the only one who see it, but you see it in part? That's why I think for anybody doing this work, that they cannot walk by sight. They have to walk by sound, and not the sound of their own ego, the sound of their intuition, which I believe is how God speaks to us. So I think walking by sound is what we need to do to be authentic, to be courageous, and to fulfill our purpose. You cannot fulfill your purpose if you're walking by sight, because God didn't call us to be imitations of anything. God didn't call us to be imitators. God called us to be originators. That means that whatever we need to do has not been done before. That's why we have to close our eyes, as my grandmother said, so we can see what we're looking at.
I love it. We can't walk by sight, but by sound. I love that. I love it. The power of imagination.
Yes.
The sound of your intuition. That's very powerful. That's a different way to actually look at it, because we often think, I'm not walking we're walking by faith. We don't think about by sound and the power of the imagination and visualizing, and then listening to our intuition, which all comes from God. So that is very powerful. So, Sharron, tell us a little bit about the Leadership Boutique. Tell us about that mentoring program. I want to know more about that.
Sure. I started the Leadership Boutique because I was realizing in my coaching sessions that there were a lot of educated women who were in toxic environments, and it was eroding their self-esteem. And I'm talking about doctors and lawyers and pharmacists, people who had defied the odds, had come into these corporate cultures and start feeling less than because they were dealing with microaggressions. They were dealing with hostile environments. They were dealing with code switching. But nobody was telling them how to deal with it. When I graduated from college in the mid-'80s, a couple of sisters took me aside and said, listen, this is how you navigate in toxic water, because you have to know the water that you swim in so you won't drown. And they helped me. But I don't think that's happening as much as it used to be when I grew up. I think we have bought into this illusion of inclusion. And so people are not getting the mentoring that they need to be successful. Now, they might get mentoring to do the job, but not mentoring to stay sane while they're doing the job. And sometimes you need people to tell you, this is how you deal with this. This is how you put language around something. This is how you control the room as a Black woman, because our experience as a Black woman is a very unique experience because we deal with the intersection of racism and sexism. So how do you deal with that and still hold your power? How do you deal with that and still own your femininity? How do you deal with that without having to betray your who you are ethically to be more palatable to the privileged few? So we have to show people how to navigate through those experiences, because what I found out, many people were leaving corporate America wanting to start businesses, but they were leaving corporate America wounded. Low self-esteem, wounded because corporate America had beat them up, wounded because they had forgotten who they are. And from starting a business, entrepreneurship is hard. You don't want to start entrepreneurship from a wounded place. You have to start from some foundational understanding that you are valuable, that you are brilliant, that you have something to offer to the world. And so I found myself building people back up. And I said, you know what? I think there's some work to do there, because I have been in corporate America for 34 years. After I got my MBA in the pharmaceutical industry, which is a very white male-dominated patriarchal system, is shifting. However, I learned some things that if I would have learned earlier, I would have been more successful. But I had to kind of figure it out by myself because I was the first generation person in the corporate setting. My parents couldn't teach me. I was first. And so we have a lot of people who are very successful. They're first. And when you're first, sometimes you don't have anybody to provide that guidance. And that's why I started Leadership Boutique, so we can come and tell the truth about our experiences. We can stop all the posturing, and we can give each other strategies and benefit from the collective wisdom of people who have been there before and have gone in those same toxic environments. Sometimes it's not toxic, but just difficult to navigate, and so that people can be successful. So that Leadership Boutique was my desire to provide something that I wish I had when I entered corporate America over 30 years ago. And it's been very successful, and I really enjoy working with those groups of women, because it's interesting. People who are very educated sometimes don't get the support that they need. Mm-hmm. Because people think just because you're successful, you don't need anything. But sometimes you might not need money, but you need support because you're fighting different battles. A new level, higher level, you have a different devil. And so sometimes people get pushed aside. If you just think about it, we don't ever evangelize to rich people. You evangelize to poor people. Well, wait a minute. The rich people need you too. The successful people need you too. The educated people need you too. And that's what I'm doing, and I'm really loving it.
Absolutely. And I love that the Leadership Boutique focuses on the experiences of women of color in the workplace. Sometimes, like you said, corporate America can leave you wounded, especially as a woman of color. You can feel left out, you can become wounded and frustrated. And it's not a good feeling. And so one of the things I wanted to talk with you about, because of your experience in corporate America and leadership, what are some of the common challenges that busy professionals, or let's just say women of color, experience in their personal lives? So
Sure.
some of those challenges that professional women of color would be experiencing in their personal lives.
What a great question. One of the things I think it's important for everybody to understand is that our private pain shows up in public places.
Yes.
And the challenge is many times we have wounds because we were the only Black kid in the school, only Black kid in the class, only Black kid in our company. And those wounds have never been healed nor addressed, right? And so sometimes you are going into situations where you're wounded. And what happens is when you are a wounded person, you can't win the battles because you become so emotional. It's hard for you to hear feedback as objective because you feel like people are attacking you. It's hard to be strategic when you're emotional because we never are our best selves when we're emotional. So we have to deal with those types of wounds. Secondly, we have to deal with those types of wounds because oftentimes we're the first one in our families who has the six-figure job. And so even though we have our families, sometimes our families are jealous of us because we have it made in the shade. They don't understand that we are fighting demons every day, not only to get the job, but to stay at the job. And so sometimes we lack support, emotional support at home. And so many times successful people need support. The third thing I think people don't realize is that success is spiritual. And so if we don't clean, and I don't mean religious, spiritual, and if we don't really have a higher understanding of how to connect with our higher power, we won't have the power we need to withstand and endure challenges. And so we have to deal with how do we develop a healthy spiritual practice and a spiritual relationship so we feel strong even when we are facing challenges in the valley. Because you will go through the valley, right? But
if you will.
A buoyancy, if you don't have some spiritual horsepower, you will sink in the valley versus being empowered to climb up the mountain again. So we need some support. We also need to, I feel like women of color, we need to understand that our history of oppression keeps us from collaborating with each other in healthy ways. I call it sister sabotage. And I see a lot of women in corporate America hurting each other because they have bought into this oppressive mentality that they want to be the only one. It's kind of like the crap barrel mentality. And so sometimes we are getting shot by friendly fire, each other. And so I try to help people understand where those toxic mindsets come from. And so they can understand the behavior when they're hurting their own sister. And so I do a lot of work around that. So those are 4 areas that I think are really important that people understand. And if I had to add one more, it's to get a coach. I've always had a coach since it wasn't called coaching in the 80s when I had a coach, but I did myself 10% of my income every year is a coach because I believe that you need an extra set of eyes to rise. I think I need to have a place where I can cry and tell about the frustrations of dealing with coworkers and sometimes frustration of dealing with challenging situations that I have as a woman and as a woman of color. I need somebody to give me some guidance and some tips to be a better leader, better strategist, to be a better speaker, to run meetings more effectively. And you can't do that alone. And I think that's one of the challenges I see with so many Black women. They think they can be successful by themselves. Every dream needs a team. And even if your team is not in the sewing corporation that you are working in, you need to be supported by that collective wisdom so that you can rise. And I just think so many times, so many Black women have been hurt by other Black women that they are concerned to share and to tap into that collective wisdom. But if you don't have the wisdom, you can't win. Because it's one thing to have the ability to do something, but wisdom helps you know how to do it. And you cannot be successful without ability and wisdom. And I think that's the challenge that we need. And we need collective wisdom because a lot of us have not been in corporate America long enough to have enough wisdom. So we have to kind of put all of our wisdom together and to help each other navigate. Because if one of us is successful, all of us will become successful. And I think that is the key.
It is the key. If one of us is successful, we can all be successful. And I love the fact that you talked about coaches needing coaches. Coaches need coaches. I think we all need someone that we can be accountable to. We all need what I like to call purpose partners. Mm-hmm. And so even for myself, having someone, a health and wellness coach, having a business coach, having a personal development coach, those are all important investments that I realize within the last few years. I need someone in each one of those areas because I can't do it by myself. I might say, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times this week. But if I don't have a coach or somebody to be held accountable and say, Tamiko, did you get up and get to the gym? I might not do it. But if I'm paying you to coach me, I'm going to do it. If I'm paying you to be my personal development coach, you best believe I put in it's an investment. And so I'm going to make sure that I'm there for that coaching call, or I'm there, for that particular accountability session. And so just being intentional about our personal and our professional development is also important. So I'm glad that you touched on that, which leads me to something else. We're all busy professionals. So I wanted to ask you, how do you start your day? So I'm a huge believer in practicing some type of morning ritual to get my day started, just so that I can have a positive, successful day. Like, I don't feel good if I wake up and if I don't pray, if I don't do prayer and meditation, if I don't recite my positive affirmations, which I call mirror work, where I actually look at myself in the mirror and I recite positive affirmations over myself based on, what am I facing on that particular day. And so I like to do that every day. If I don't do that, I feel like my day is just not going to go well. So do you have a morning ritual or something that you do as a daily practice that helps you prepare for the day ahead?
Oh, yes. My first thing is prayer. Mm-hmm. And not only as a minister, but just as a person of faith and spirituality, I think prayer is key. Prayer allows us to talk to God and hear God talk back to us. And I think prayer, I have expanded my understanding of what prayer is, because I think we have many times thinking we have to be on our knees and have to have these formalities. Praying is just something that I do. It's just like I'm talking to you. Talk. So I think prayer is important. But there are 3 things I talk about and I do daily. One is for gratitude. Thank God for another opportunity to do whatever I'm called to do. I check my attitude because I ask myself, who do I need to become? What are my dreams demanding of me? What are my goals requiring of me today? So I always talk about, how do I need to show up? And then the altitude is, how far do I want to soar? Because I think soaring is a decision. How good of a person do I want to be? How kind do I want to be? And I have to ask myself that question because I have to keep it in the forefront of my mind so I can stay in integrity. So I think gratitude, attitude, altitude is really important. I also work out. I think working out, moving my body allows me to decompress, but also allows me to shift the negativity out of my body, to release it. Because I think when we have and hold a lot of stress, we minimize our ability to be creative and innovative, because you can't be creative when you're worried. And so I make sure I work out. I make sure I do some type of physical activity. Another ritual is to eat well. I think so many times we underestimate the power of nourishing our bodies. So I make sure I'm nourishing my bodies with good food, and nourishing my mind with good teaching. So every day I listen to a sermon or a podcast. I'm always reading a couple of books every week. And also I'm a writer, so my 8th book is about to come out. So
wow.
Sure, that is really, really important. And I have to do that because I function in many different ways. I'm an associate minister at a church. I work in corporate America. I have my coaching business. I'm an author and I'm a speaker. I have 2 parents who are in their 70s, and I'm in that sandwich generation. Then I have a son who's about to turn 26 who just wrote his first book. So I play a lot of different roles. And so it's really important for me to find that quiet space so I can understand what I'm called to do, but also to be honest with myself about what I need to stop doing and pay somebody else to do, because it's not my gifting. And I think that you can only get that quiet honesty in stillness. Because I always tell myself, if you want to have a big wow, you got to listen to the whisper. And the whisper is God's voice. And so I want to have a lot of big wows in my life, but you can't have a wow without a whisper. And so I try to make sure I'm hearing God. And then if I can't hear God, I tell God, please show me another way, because I think I hear you, but I'm not. But I'm not clear. And I think that's how we have to talk to God and get out of the ritualism and get into a relationship. And that's when we will feel empowered.
Yes, I love that you said it doesn't have to be like a ritual, like you're getting on your knees, and that's okay. But I think oftentimes people think like prayer and meditation is going to be something that's going to be spooky, and I have to do this whole ritual. And it really doesn't have to be that way. I like personally, I call it a date with God, where I like to drink coffee. Like I start my day with coffee. And so I'll pour a cup of coffee and I'll pull out my journal, and I might have a specific scripture that, I'm meditating on that day. But that's my time alone with God. That's my prayer time. It's nothing spooky or ritualistic. I'm just setting a date with him. I'm sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my journal, and I'm talking to him, or I'm writing him a letter in my journal. And then, I like to just sit quiet for a little while I sip on my coffee. But that's that's what works for me. And so I think we have to find what works for us. It may work for a person to get on their knees, to do something more of a ritual, but I think we have to find what works for us and what makes sense for us and our lifestyles. And I think I love that you said that you talked about the stillness. I think we have such busy lives. Like I'm listening to you, and you're an associate pastor, you're a mom, you have all these things. And it's like, how do you decompress at the end of the day? Like, how do you balance? And I didn't have this to talk about, but when I heard you describing everything that you do, I'm like, wow, she's powerful. She does a lot. How do you decompress? Like, how do you decompress at the end of the day, or how do you balance all of that?
Sure. Honestly, I have to say balance is something that I'm challenged by. What I have realized in my life, even though I do a lot of stuff, I'm very introverted. I know it doesn't seem like it, and I like to spend a lot of time alone. And so I section off my day, because whatever I'm doing, I want to give it full attention. I don't watch TV. I didn't grow up watching TV. I don't do a lot of that stuff. So I cut my days off. For example, I know on Sunday is church day, and I think about what I want for the week. Then I make sure I only see clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays and 4 hours on Saturdays. I make sure that I'm available to my son every night. And I make sure that I hire a lot of help. and I think that is a challenge that I see so many successful women doing. They don't hire help. It's interesting to me. I think you can totally get this. I see women spend a lot of money on their massages and on their nails, on the hair, but they don't spend money on getting their house clean, getting somebody to cook for them, getting somebody to run their errands, right? So I understand to be successful means I need to hire people to do things that impede my progress, in which allows me to stay in my genius zone. The speaking, teaching, preaching, and writing is kind of who I am all the time. I don't care where I am. It's just that it just shows up with a scripture. It shows up without a scripture. It shows up with a marketing plan at my job. But my core skills, my core talents show up in everything that I do. And that's why I think it's so important that people understand their gifts and their talents, because if we look at our lives, there are themes of what we do well. And if we understand those themes and focus our time on that, it just hire for everything else. And that's how I'm able to do it, because I only function and worry about things I'm good at, and I hire out. And I understand that sometimes I have to trade money for time, meaning that if I want my time back, I have to pay somebody to do stuff I don't want to do. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and it's okay to do that. And I think that's a great point. We think about balance and how am I going to do this and how am I going to do that? But when you focus on your gifts and your talents, you can subcontract everything out to someone else. Even with us, like, I don't like cleaning baseboards. So guess what? My husband was like, let's bring in someone on a quarterly basis or however often we need them. They can do the baseboards and the deep cleaning. And then we could just, I just dust on the weekends and, wash dishes and things like that. But there are just certain things that I'm like, I don't know if I have time to do that. And so just, knowing what I'm good at and doing that, and then paying somebody to do that other stuff that I might not want to do, or it's not that I don't have time, but our time should be focused on those gifts and talents and making sure that we're able to support and give back to those people that we're called to minister to. And so I think that's very important.
I call it the joy meter. I feel like always be tuned into your spirit. If it brings joy, do it. If it doesn't bring joy, don't. See, we make life complicated. My life is really easy. Do I like do this? How does this make me feel? And if something, and I'm not talking about struggle, because we all have to struggle, but I'm talking about struggle should not be a lifestyle. It should be an event, right?
Right.
And if I have to do something that doesn't feel right, I know it's not for me to do. Because remember, we came loaded to the world already prepared and equipped to be successful. So if I'm not being successful and it feels heavy, takes me a long time to do it, that's not my area of genius. And so let joy be the barometer to determine if you should do something or if you should hand it off.
That's so extreme with you, Sharron. I really enjoyed chatting with you today. I've learned a lot about the importance, or like literally how to soar higher, how to dare to soar higher. So we had a great conversation today. But before we go, I do want to know if you have any other initiatives or anything else that you want to tell us about that you have coming up, any events.
Oh, sure. In a couple of months, I have a book coming out called Destined to Soar to Unwrapping Your Purpose. And it talks about our purpose. And it's a different type of book because it reads probably like a sermon and case studies. But I didn't want to do a book that everybody else has already done. I wanted people to be able to read a book and see people going through the journey, because I think we learn more from the process than the end product. So I'm excited about that. I have You Can Depend on You starts on March the 9th. And that's my class based on my book, my first book that I wrote years ago called I Can Depend on You. And it's really self-paced, so people can go through the modules, but it includes every Sunday I give a Q&A session for 60 minutes to answer any of those questions. Dare to Be Me starts, I think it starts in May, and I'm excited about that. That's when we deal with people who are in transition and transitioning from careers, transitioning from marriages, transitioning from jobs, transitioning from empty nesters. Some people are transitioning from divorce. Some people are transitioning from sexuality. It's all about how do I transition to who I really am. And it is a journey. I love it. And I keep my groups very small. I don't know about a lot of coaches. I love group coaching, but I love to keep my groups maximum 6 people, because you can't get that one-on-one that I think is really critical. And we need some hot seats. Mm-hmm. And then also don't share. After around 6 or 7, 8 people won't share what they need to share to get help. It's kind of like going to the doctor. You can't go to the doctor and you want your doctor to diagnose you when you won't take off your clothes. It's the same with coaching. You got to kind of disrobe so we can see where the pain is and see where the malfunction is. And that's why I like to keep my group small, so people can have transformation. I think too many people are cycling through coaches, but they're not getting the transformation that they need, because sometimes people need more hand holding, and that's okay. So those are some things that I have coming up. I do have very small events, but I never publicize my events. So I might start doing that differently, just because I like to keep my events small. But I do have some roundtables coming up, and I would love for people, if they are in transition or if they are interested in looking at what's going on in their work setting and look at some of the systemic influences that may be impeding their progress, to email me at Sharron@SharronJamison.com, because I don't want to publicize my class, because sometimes you get people who are not a right fit. And I want people who are willing and ready to go on the journey of self-discovery and self-activation. And I'm excited to see what this year holds for my life.
That sounds exciting. So for anyone that wants additional information or they want to follow you on social media or get connected with you, what is your social media and how can we connect with you outside of the podcast?
Sure. Everything is my name, Sharron Jamison. And for my website, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything is Sharron Jamison. If they follow me and friend me, I would follow and friend them back. But I would love for people to get on my mailing list, which is bit.link Dare To Soar, because they will get updated on what's happening and what events and classes are available. And I absolutely would love that. And also every week I send out some type of free worksheet and some free content on my newsletter. So I would love for people to connect with me. But also, you know what, I just thought about something. I have a free 7-day audio series about friends, how to pick our friends, because sometimes I think we pick people who are available versus people who are suitable. And so I talk about what are the characteristics of good friends. And that's something that is absolutely free. And they can go on my website and download that. So a couple of ways to connect with me. And I look forward to connecting with your audience. And thanks so much for giving me this opportunity.
Wonderful. I took away a lot of great nuggets, but one more thing before we close out, I'd love for you to share a final thought or a charge for the audience.
A final charge would be for people to really get to know who they are. Get to know who they are without their titles, without their labels, without their degrees and credentials, without their diplomas, without their shoulds and expectations, to peel back all those layers that they have used to protect them and use to help them survive, and to see who they really are. Because when you know who you really are, that's when you will not only go far, but you would know what you came to this world to do. So my final charge would be pull back the layers and interrogate every story, every label, every belief that somebody has given you, taught you, because a lot of the beliefs that you are holding and having right now you have already outgrown. So peel back the onions, see who you are, because you can only soar high if you know who you are, because God will never bless imposter. God will bless you.
That's good. That is so good. Well, you all heard it first from Sharron Jamison, Dare to Soar Higher. Listen, Sharron, I enjoyed every bit of our conversation. I took away a lot of great nuggets, and I look forward to supporting you in your upcoming initiatives. So thank you again for joining us for Living the Empowered Life.
Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful, wonderful day, and continued success to you and all that your hands touch. Blessing.
Thank you. Are you the go-to person in your group of friends? Do you have a zest for life and enjoy helping others reach their full potential? Do you feel a calling to make a difference in the world? If this is you, then you may want to consider becoming a life coach. Our next virtual online training begins March 31st, 2020. Our life coach training focuses on women who desire to motivate, inspire, and empower other women by using their skills, expertise, and experience to thrive as a personal development coach. Using the empowerment formula, participants will learn step-by-step tools, tips, and techniques needed to attract great clients and build a thriving, purposeful, and profitable coaching business. Get all the details and register at www.tamikolori.com/life coach training. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Living the Empowered Life and my amazing conversation with Sharron Jamison. I truly hope that you were able to draw some motivation and inspiration from our discussion today as you continue on your journey of living an empowered life. And remember, if you want to soar high in life, you have to give up the things and people that weigh you down. So, ladies, listen. It's time to discover and live your life purpose. It's time to value yourself. It's time to set goals that are going to move you forward in life. It's time to rebuild your confidence. It's time to fearlessly walk in your authentic power. And ladies, it's time to live the empowered life.